My leg was broken, yet he left me for a word from the woman he loved.
My heart had a lock, and someone gently tried to open it.
John Anderson finally got together with the girl he had liked for 8 years.
And I lay in a hospital bed, staring at my leg in a cast.
He came to see me, sharing his excitement and joy.
I've waited for Emily Smith for 8 years and finally, it happened.
I'm happy for you, John. Congratulations.
He left, and I thought I would cry, but strangely, I didn't. I just felt a click in my heart, as if something had suddenly locked.
I had liked him for 20 years, wasted 20 years. He said he would become a famous photographer and take the most beautiful wedding photos for me. For John Anderson's dream, I scrimped and saved to buy him the best Hasselblad camera. But he never took a single photo of me.
6 months later, my enthusiastic aunt set me up on another blind date. Sitting in a cafe, I waited for the guy to arrive.
Good luck on your date. I'm looking forward to taking the most beautiful wedding photos for you.
I looked at his profile picture, where he and Emily Smith were smiling together, and put down my phone. In the past, I would have replied to his messages instantly, often grinning foolishly at his words of concern. Now, I even wanted to delete him.
I thought I would feel sad, but my heart was calm.
The bell at the cafe door suddenly jingled, and a man in a black suit hurried in.
Sorry I'm late.
It's okay, but I thought to myself, this would be the first and last time we met.
A man who is late for a blind date. Even though I noticed he looked a bit like Hyun Bin. We sat down and chatted briefly, and I discovered we had graduated from the same middle school.
Alice Johnson, don't you remember me?
Should I remember you?
During the 3 years of middle school and the first year of high school. I was in the class next to yours.
Oh, really? I'm trying hard to recall, but I'm sorry, I couldn't remember.
At that moment, a gentle look appeared in his eyes, and he asked,
Alice Johnson, do you still like John Anderson?
I looked up in surprise, really looking at him for the first time. Under his sharp eyebrows were charming eyes, so handsome they made my heart skip a beat. Suddenly, I remembered who he was. Michael Brown!
the bookish boy from middle school who was always top of the class, but very short, always wearing black-rimmed glasses. How did he grow so tall? Michael Brown used to look up at me, but now, I had to look up at him. In middle school, John Anderson loved to joke with me. He always said that a clingy girl like me would never get married. Back then, he hadn't met Emily Smith yet, and he said,
It's okay, if you really can't get married, you can marry me.
It was just a joke to him, but it made me happy for a long time. I imagined myself in a white dress, marrying the prince I had adored since childhood, and living the happiest life. Reality proved him right. In that age of budding feelings, all the crushes and rumors bypassed me. The boys always watched me from afar. Because
Sirius back in 8th grade, a small, frail boy with black-rimmed glasses, who looked every bit the bookworm, gave me a Christmas card. Sirius, or perhaps it was a love letter. Sirius at that time, I was afraid John Anderson might misunderstand, so I refused without even looking at it. That boy was Michael Brown. My refusal didn't deter him. Every Christmas, Michael would, amidst the laughter of our classmates, blush deeply and hand me a card. Shy here, Alice. Merry Christmas. Sirius from 8th grade to sophomore year, for 3 consecutive years. In the midst of the embarrassing laughter, Michael would nervously adjust his black-rimmed glasses, stammering something I couldn't understand. Shy, I hope you like it. Sirius, I would just smile and refuse. Back then, My eyes were filled only with John Anderson. There was no room for anyone else. Even though I knew John liked Emily Smith, I still waited for him. Sad after the final exams of sophomore year, Michael stopped me on the playground and asked if I could give him a chance. Hopeful Alice, can you give me a chance? Serious, I refused again. Sad at that moment, Michael's eyes couldn't hide his disappointment. Whispering, okay, I understand. Serious, he never approached me again. In junior year, I heard his family had moved to another city. We hadn't seen each other for 10 years. Sipping my Blue Mountain coffee, I mentioned that I had once liked a boy so much that I refused Michael. Cheerful, it's a pity he only gave me 3 cards. Otherwise, receiving a card every year would have been quite an achievement in my life. Surprised, I sent you a card every year. I never forgot. Serious, 10 cards over 10 years, and I hadn't received a single one? Puzzled, who took them? Serious, my hand trembled slightly, and the spoon fell into the coffee cup. Every Christmas, I would go to great lengths to be with John Anderson. The cards, who took them? Cheerful, as we chatted about our school days, I found I got along very well with Michael. So, over the next month, we had a few more meals together. Cheerful, remember that book we read in high school? Cheerful, yes, and the movie adaptation was amazing. Cheerful, Michael was witty and gentlemanly, and we always had endless topics to talk about. Our interactions felt like those of old friends. Before I knew it, I hadn't contacted John Anderson in a long time. Relieved, I thought he must be so happy that he had forgotten about me. Serious, one day, John suddenly called me at 3 a.m. His voice was filled with an unmistakable excitement, and that magnetic tone that had stirred my heart countless times. Excited Alice, I'm planning to propose to her. Do you think I'll succeed this time? Serious, in the dead of night, the clock in the room made a clear and prolonged tick-tock sound. I knew very well who the her he referred to was. I wasn't happy, but surprisingly, I felt a sense of relief. Cheerful, good luck. You'll succeed. Serious, there was silence on the other end of the line for a long time. Puzzled, are you okay? Serious, why wouldn't I be? Serious, John and Emily Smith were always flaunting their love like a princess and her prince. And my life remained simple. Work and meals with Michael. Work and going shopping and watching movies with Michael. Work, work, work. Michael, Michael, Michael. Serious, one weekend, John invited me to dinner. It was the first time he had asked me out since he started dating Emily. I remembered the past, when I always acted as a messenger between the two.
In the comic store and the accessory shop, our figures were always present, studying Emily Smith's preferences together and picking out gifts for her.
John, what do you think of this necklace for Emily?
It looks perfect. She'll love it.
During college, I worked 2 jobs one summer to save money for John Anderson, hoping he could buy a Hasselblad camera to pursue his dream of becoming a photographer. But he took the money I gave him and bought a sterling silver necklace for Emily Smith instead.
Emily said she didn't like the design.
I'm sorry, John. It's just not fair.
Seeing his disappointed expression, I suppressed my own sadness and felt it was unfair for him.
You know, John, Emily doesn't appreciate all you do for her.
Alice, that's enough. Come on, let's go apologize.
I didn't understand why my humble love for him was met with countless instances of indifference. Looking back now, I feel so foolish.
How could I have been so foolish?
This time, I asked Michael Brown.
Would you like to meet my friends with me?
I thought, Michael doesn't know that the friend I want him to meet is John Anderson. However, when we sat down, he looked at John without any sign of surprise. It was John who seemed a bit taken aback.
Hi, Alice. And this must be Michael.
Emily looked very innocent, meticulously dressed up. Maybe she knew she was going to meet me.
I didn't know you would bring a friend.
Yes, this is Michael.
You're Michael Brown, right? I know you. You were the top scorer in our high school entrance exam. I didn't expect you to be Alice Johnson's friend.
So, Alice, how did you two meet?
I felt a bit awkward and hesitated as I looked at Michael. Although we had reconnected through a blind date and had been meeting regularly, neither of us had broken the ice.
We're currently dating.
John had been puffing on an e-cigarette. Suddenly, he took a deep drag and started coughing uncontrollably.
John, are you okay? Why so careless?
Instinctively, or perhaps out of habit, I wanted to pour him a glass of water. But I saw Emily patting his back, smiling. John turned to look at her and smiled back. They looked like the perfect couple from a movie.
He must be very happy now.
As we left after dinner, John asked me,
How are you getting home?
We plan to take a walk along the river and enjoy the breeze before heading back.
Before I could speak, Michael had already taken my hand and replied with a smile.
The elevator is here.
John seemed to want to say something to me, but seeing Emily talking to him in the elevator, he had to follow her in. I watched them leave. For the first time, John's gaze lingered on me for a long time, even with Emily present. I knew he had many questions for me, but I had already expressed everything through my actions. Until the elevator doors closed and they disappeared from sight. The river was filled with endless ripples, and even the night breeze carried a sense of restlessness in the height of summer.
Perhaps the true restlessness was within me.
From the moment we left the hall, Michael had been holding my hand without letting go. I knew he had parked the car in the underground garage, but he said he wanted to take a walk. I thought he had something to say to me, but there was only silence between us. The evening sun cast a warm glow as they walked along the riverbank, their footsteps echoing softly against the cobblestone path.
Are you tired? Do you want to sit for a while?
Yes, a break would be nice.
When they reached the stone bench by the river, Michael, knowing Alice's slight cleanliness issue, took out a piece of paper and placed it on the bench for her to sit on.
I'm sorry.
His apology seemed a bit out of the blue. Alice turned to look at him and realized he had been watching her all along. His gaze suddenly became intense, reminiscent of the boy who used to look up at her with black-framed glasses.
Why are you apologizing?
Today, I told them we were dating, without your consent. I'm sorry.
Actually, I don't even know what our relationship is right now.
Her words seemed to give him some hope, and his furrowed brows suddenly relaxed. He held her hand gently.
Then, could our relationship change from friends to a romantic one?
Alice remained silent, unsure of how to respond.
Alice, I've never forgotten you. When I found out you agreed to meet me, I was so happy I almost lost my mind. I thought I had grown up, that when I saw a girl I liked, I should be more composed and take things slowly. But today, when I saw John Anderson, I was afraid that if I took things slowly again, I would only face your rejection.
His tone gradually weakened like a flickering candle.
If you don't like me saying these things, just tell me, and I won't say them again.
A small tuft of grass had grown at the edge of the concrete floor, swaying in the wind. It was like a key that unlocked something within Alice. She looked at Michael, who was anxiously waiting for her answer. His cautious fear mixed with hopeful anticipation reminded her of how she used to look at John Anderson.
Michael.
As his eyes began to dim, Alice stood up slightly. Closing her eyes, she leaned into his embrace. For about 3 seconds, he was stunned and didn't react. But then, he held her tightly. So tightly, as if he wanted to merge her into his life. He timidly explored her lips.
She tilted her face slightly, her nostrils filled with his scent. His kiss gradually went from cautious to passionate, as if it would take her breath away.
Michael looked down at her, his face carrying a childlike smile, his lips glistening and slightly swollen from the kiss. That contradictory yet captivating look was both sexy and sincere. At that moment, Alice finally connected him with the boy from their youth. It turns out Michael Brown's smile is quite charming. A few days later, John Anderson asked her to go to the movies, saying you would be alone.
Would you like to go to the movies with me? I'll be alone.
Sorry, John, but I've already bought tickets for the new movie and plan to watch it with Michael.
It took John a while to reply.
I see, then let's have dinner together tonight.
Sorry, after the movie, I'll probably have dinner with Michael.
As she ended the call, Alice felt a sense of clarity and peace. The future held uncertainty, but for now, she knew where her heart. He didn't reply, and I didn't mind. In the evening, while having dinner with Michael Brown, I casually checked my phone and saw that John Anderson had posted a new update. The photo showed tickets for a newly released movie and a picture of him with Emily Smith. Michael, who had somehow moved to sit beside me, saw my social media feed displaying John Anderson's update.
When you're with me, don't think about other men. Especially John Anderson.
His lips tightened instantly, and he domineeringly took my phone away.
I'm not thinking about other men.
It was then I realized that Michael's previous demeanor of maturity and politeness was all an act. Sometimes, Michael could be as earnest as a child. I couldn't help but laugh, which only made Michael angrier.
You can still laugh?
Until I nestled into his warm embrace like a cat and looked up at him. He glanced around, disregarding the people around us, and then lowered his head to kiss me passionately. He held me so tightly once again. As if letting go of me would mean losing me. He only left after walking me to the hallway. I hummed a tune as I went upstairs. Suddenly, a voice sounded in front of my door.
You're so happy?
I looked up and saw John Anderson standing at my door. There were a dozen cigarette butts on the ground, and the smell of smoke was strong. If it were in the past, seeing him appear suddenly like this would have made me as happy as a magpie. But at this moment, I was only surprised.
What are you doing here?
You haven't answered my question yet.
He seemed to force a smile. But I knew him well, that wasn't his genuine happy expression. I didn't say anything. We had been friends for over 20 years, and an awkwardness that shouldn't have existed gradually filled the air. After a while, he sighed.
Walk with me.
I nodded, and when he got closer, I smelled the distinct scent of alcohol on him.
You've been drinking?
Yeah.
The night was deep, and the lights in the neighborhood were dim, creating a hazy atmosphere. I couldn't see his expression clearly.
Are you really dating Michael Brown?
Didn't you hear him say so?
On the circular path around the lake, I walked ahead, and he suddenly grabbed my hand.
I want to hear it from you.
I looked at his face and noticed a flush on his cheeks. He wasn't good at drinking. I used to worry that drinking would make him feel unwell. But now, I only thought about Michael. He told me not to think about other guys, especially John Anderson. Thinking of Michael's angry expression when he said that, a smile involuntarily appeared on my lips.
Yes, I guess we're dating.
He tightened his grip on my arm, making it hurt a little. His gaze became stubborn, and he suddenly shouted at me.
What do you mean by I guess? Either you are or you aren't.
In the past, I was always gentle and soft in front of him. But now, his attitude inexplicably made me angry. I forcefully shook off his hand and raised my voice.
Why are you acting like this? Who I date has nothing to do with you, does it?
His throat moved slightly, and a hint of pain. The confrontation between Alice and John Anderson started unexpectedly one breezy afternoon.
Alice, did you do it on purpose?
Do what on purpose? I don't understand what you mean.
Did you get together with Michael just because Emily and I are together? Were you trying to upset me?
Alice looked at John with a mix of disbelief and amusement. His confidence seemed almost foolish.
John, you're giving yourself too much credit. Why would I get together with someone else just to upset you? And do you really think that would even bother you?
Alice, what if I said it does?
His response left Alice momentarily stunned. She turned away, hugging her trembling self, and gazed at the drifting lotus leaves on the artificial lake.
If you came here just to tell me this, you can leave now.
To say Alice wasn't sad at all would be a lie. But what truly saddened her wasn't John Anderson, it was the wasted time. She had made herself so insignificant, lost her direction, and couldn't see the good in any man, including his foolishness. After a long while, she finally heard John's angry footsteps fading away. The next day was the weekend, the day Michael and Alice had planned to go on an outing with his friends. Michael introduced her to his friends generously.
So, you're Alice Johnson. We've heard a lot about you.
His friends teased Michael, saying they never thought his dream would come true after all these years. Sensing there was a story behind this, Alice pressed for details.
What do you guys mean by that?
Please, just for today, don't embarrass me. I'll do anything for you guys another time, okay?
His friends laughed and made him drink. He drank several cups, and Alice couldn't help but worry about him.
That's enough, Michael. Don't drink more.
She took his cup away, not letting him drink more, while his friends cheered and laughed. She kept smiling. Until the evening when the bonfire was lit and they sat on the grass by the river. By now, Alice could naturally lean on Michael's shoulder. She liked to playfully pinch his well-toned abs.
You're so handsome.
On the lake, two wild ducklings swam together, creating ripples that spread across the dark water. Their gazes were fixed on that spot, making the scene feel boundless.
What did your friends mean by those words?
Nothing much.
Come on, tell me.
Alice found this trick very effective. Michael always couldn't help but kiss her, losing himself. They only parted when they were almost out of breath, reluctantly.
Do you remember how short I used to be in middle school?
Yes, you were the shortest in the class, but had the best grades in the whole school.
Later, I saw someone tall and handsome. I swore I would become a handsome guy. In the second year of high school, I went to another city to study, and suddenly, I grew over 10 centimeters taller. I played basketball seriously, grew taller, wrote cards for you, and rejected any girl who tried to get close to me. All my classmates knew that the only person I liked was Alice Johnson. I paid attention to what books you read, what movies you watched. Even if I didn't like them, I would watch them several times.
Alice playfully punched him with a mischievous smile.
You're such a romantic, Michael.
Their laughter echoed through the night. Michael gently held Alice's pointed chin in his hand, his lips drawing closer to hers.
Alice, do you know? I love seeing you smile the most, with your eyes curved. It's the prettiest sight.
Alice smiled again, the warmth of his words lingering.
Why are you unhappy today?
Am I?
Yes, I can tell.
Alice remained silent. Michael released her, his gentle eyes turning more serious, as if he wanted to say something but held back. Instead, he embraced her tightly.
Alice, no matter who it's because of, don't be sad or upset.
After a while, Alice understood the underlying meaning of his words. She lightly punched him with her fist.
You silly.
Alice knew Michael probably misunderstood, thinking she was still thinking about John Anderson. She wanted to explain, but found herself tongue-tied. John Anderson had changed. He started to chat with Alice more proactively, about trivial things like what he ate today, meaningless topics just to start a conversation. She replied occasionally, sometimes just leaving it aside. But he left Emily Smith and began to ask Alice out, almost competing with Michael.
Alice, didn't you say you always miss the taste of that cafe? I bought tickets to the amusement park. Let's go! I think the latest autumn fashion is beautiful. You would look great in it.
John began to pester Alice, waiting at the entrance of her neighborhood, waiting downstairs at her office. Michael ran into him several times while he was waiting for her and always left quietly, letting her be with John.
Why can't he understand?
Alice never accepted John Anderson's invitations, even though he kept waiting for her. Her mom proudly mentioned to the neighbors how pretty Alice was when she was little and how a boy kept sending her greeting cards every Christmas, for 10 years straight.
Mom, did you throw away those greeting cards?
I was afraid they would affect your studies, and later, seeing how determined you were to be with John Anderson. Those greeting cards would only add to your troubles. But I didn't throw them away. I found them and gave them all to you.
Looking at the slightly yellowed greeting cards in her hand, spanning from that snowy night when they parted in sophomore year until last year.
Alice, Merry Christmas. I'm at Tsinghua, it's beautiful here. Alice, Merry Christmas. I graduated from college, I'm going abroad for further studies. Alice, Merry Christmas. I'm back, I'm finally returning to my homeland, finally, I can be a bit closer to you. Alice, Merry Christmas. I'm working hard, hoping you can see a completely different me.
The elegant and handsome handwriting, every signature was Michael. Alice put down the greeting card. I hurriedly wiped away the tear stains on the card. But I couldn't wipe away these 10 years. No, if you count middle school and high school, it's been a full 15 years. Later, I heard that John Anderson and Emily Smith were not getting along well. It's like how a cherished memory can fade over time. But I never expected that one day Emily would come looking for me.
The door was pounded loudly, and as soon as I opened it, Emily slapped me across the face.
What kind of spell did you cast on John Anderson? Even when he's drunk, he calls out your name.
John quickly rushed out of the elevator. Seeing Emily hit me, he became furious.
Smack! How dare you hit her?
You actually hit me for her.
Emily cried hysterically but was forcibly taken away by John. I looked at the mess around me, feeling the burning pain on my cheek. So speechless. I thought the day's surprises were over, but then the doorbell rang again. This time, when I opened the door, John was standing there alone.
I sent her home.
You should spend more time with her.
And what about you?
I didn't expect him to ask me that. A man who had heartlessly left me behind to chase after someone else. Would he really care about me? When I looked up, he reached out, almost touching my cheek. For the first time, I didn't look forward to or enjoy his touch. I moved away. He seemed a bit embarrassed.
Aren't you going to invite me in?
I had no choice but to let him in. He looked around and noticed that the place was very different from the last time he had been here. There were 7 or 8 bouquets of blooming roses on the table, vibrant and fresh. There were many unopened snacks on the coffee table. On the sofa, there were several sets of high-end women's clothing, tags still attached. He knew I was always frugal and would never buy so many things for myself. He guessed who had bought them for me. But he couldn't guess that my frugality was to save money to buy him a Hasselblad camera.
Emily, what did she say to you earlier?
Nothing.
Do you know why we argued?
I don't want to know.
John sat on a long sofa. I sat on a single-seater on the other side. He frowned in dissatisfaction, stood up, and walked over to me. When I realized something was off and tried to escape, he looked at me intensely, pinning me beneath him.
No, you need to know. Because when I kissed her, the person I was thinking about was you.
My face turned red, and I felt an inexplicable resistance in my heart. Sighing, I shook my head.
Stop talking.
When we ate together, I thought about how you used to peel shrimp for me and order my favorite dishes. Even when I was drunk, the name I called out was yours. I thought I liked Emily for so many years, and that my feelings for you were just a habit. But when I saw someone else by your side, I realized that the person I truly liked was never Emily, but you.
John's words were tender yet tinged with a sense of hopeless sorrow. John Anderson whispered sweet nothings into Alice's ear, almost like a madman.
These were the kind of words that would have made the old me deliriously happy. But now, all I wanted was for him to leave.
Alice, I can't take it anymore, I really can't. All this time, the only person on my mind has been you. It wasn't until I realized I might lose you that I understood how important you were to me. I don't want you to be with that Michael Brown. Come back to me, please?
John Anderson was raging like a wild beast, yet his sorrow made him seem like a trapped animal. Alice looked at him, feeling a bit heartbroken. Because from now on, they might not even be friends anymore. When he finally stopped talking, they both heard the faint sound of Michael Brown calling from the phone trapped under the sofa.
Alice! 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 Say something! This is driving me crazy!
It was then that Alice remembered, just as John Anderson knocked on the door, she was calling Michael Brown. She hadn't hung up before running to open the door. The phone had connected. John Anderson looked at her. Alice didn't know where she found the strength, but she pushed him away. When she frantically retrieved the phone from the sofa crevice, Michael Brown had already hung up. She quickly dialed his number. Digit by digit. John Anderson grabbed her hand. His eyes held the same determination she had only ever seen when he looked at Emily Smith.
You haven't given me an answer.
Isn't my behavior clear enough? Be good to Emily Smith.
Are you finding it hard to talk to Michael Brown? I can speak to him.
No, I like Michael Brown.
Her words hit John Anderson like a bolt of lightning. For the first time, he cried in front of her. Michael Brown, not hearing Alice's response, burst into her house like a madman. When he saw John Anderson forcibly holding her and the red marks on her face, he was furious like a raging bull. He grabbed John Anderson by the collar, towering over him, and swung his fist, punch after punch.
Stop it! Stop it now!
Alice desperately tried to pull him away.
I will never forgive anyone who hurts you.
Alice knew if she didn't calm him down, he would truly lose control.
Michael Brown, if you keep this up, I will be really angry.
Alice clung to him like an octopus, dragging him away. John Anderson looked at him triumphantly, like a victor. Slowly, Michael Brown calmed down. But gradually, he became uneasy. Before Alice could speak, he interrupted her.
I'm sorry, really sorry.
His eyes shifted away, as if trying to avoid something. Full of sorrow.
Wait for me downstairs, I have something to tell you.
Can we talk another day?
Wait for me.
He nodded blankly, stumbling out the door.
Alice, you still love me. You care about me so much.
Michael Brown had just stepped out when John Anderson couldn't wait to shout. He wanted Michael Brown to hear. Alice looked at him quietly, shaking her head.
You already have Emily Smith. There's no possibility for us anymore.
He widened his eyes and declared he would break up with Emily Smith, claiming there was still a chance for us.
You've been deceiving me all along. You always loved me deeply, didn't you?
Moments ago, I had protected him and driven Michael Brown away.
Looking at the man I had loved for 20 years, I once again felt how self-centered he was. I just think you're not worth my boyfriend getting involved.
I made a call, asking Michael Brown to come up. He was a tall, strong guy, but now he seemed lifeless, like a walking shell. It was as if he had come to hear my final judgment. I threw myself into his arms. He instinctively held me tight, just like always.
Michael, it's you that I love.
My words made him turn his head to look at me, completely stunned. After a long while, tears started streaming down his face.
Alice, I know you have a kind heart. You're just afraid I'll get hurt. It's okay, tell me the truth. I can handle any blow. I've waited for you for 15 years, I can wait another 15 years, it's fine.
Hearing his words, I lifted my chin and gazed at him. He silently wept and released his hold on me.
I never told you why I completely gave up on John Anderson. Because when I was cleaning his house, I fell down the stairs and broke my leg. At that moment, Emily Smith called him after a breakup. He called an ambulance for me and then left me to comfort the girl he loved the most. So, I stopped loving him.
I shouted this with all my might. Then I picked up the vase on the table and smashed it on the ground. The crash startled Michael, making him almost jump. He stared at me with wide eyes.
From now on, Alice Johnson only loves Michael Brown.
I gazed into Michael's eyes. He showed no expression, turned, and walked towards the door. I thought he was leaving. Just as I was staring blankly at his back, Michael suddenly locked the door. He turned around, rushed towards me, and lifted me up, carrying me towards the bedroom. What I didn't expect was that when Michael and I were taking our wedding photos, John Anderson showed up. He was holding a Hasselblad camera, the one I had saved up for 2 years after starting work to buy for him.
My lifelong dream was to become a photographer and take the most beautiful wedding photos of you. Now that I have achieved my dream of becoming a photographer, I want to fulfill one last dream.
In my mind, I scoffed, wasn't his dream always Emily Smith, his unattainable love? Maybe after tearing each other apart and fighting, that unattainable love was no longer so. I had become the indelible mark on his heart. I thought Michael would be jealous and petty. Sure enough, Michael's face darkened as soon as he saw John Anderson. John was dressed like a groom, in a sharp suit, tall and handsome. His eyes were filled with sorrow, as if he wanted every action and expression to remind me of our past together. Or perhaps he wanted me to know how much pain and regret he felt. But standing next to Michael, John was half a head shorter. He suddenly looked like a best man.
This Hasselblad camera was a gift from her. Let me take your photos. Let me put an end to the 20 years of feelings between Alice and me today.
John, with a deeply emotional demeanor, pleaded with me and Michael. Michael looked at me, and I smiled at him, nodding. John looked through the lens at me in my wedding dress.
I never imagined you would look so beautiful in a wedding dress.
I saw a hint of desolation in his eyes, with tears faintly glistening. Just as he was about to press the shutter, Michael tightly wrapped his arm around my waist and leaned down. The photo captured the moment. Michael kissed me passionately.
The end.